Thank you and good morning everybody. As you just heard, I'm Deborah Wildgoose, Deputy Director of Nursing, and I'll say it again because in practice, for Rotherham, Doncaster and Southend Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust. Within the Trust we have a variety of service provision, one of which is our adult mental health services. And within those adult mental health services we have inpatient wards which include 2 PICUs. And really that's really my interest and why I'm here today. Service user satisfaction with services and the care that they receive is of paramount importance in all that all of us do. It's also seen as a significant indicator in the quality of healthcare and healthcare provision. There's very little work being published around attempts to understand the experiences of service users receiving intensive mental health care. What I'd like to do within this presentation this morning is to describe some previous work that's been undertaken. And from that, attempt to describe the importance of and how we can understand the experiences of those service users receiving our care. For this presentation, I intend to highlight some of the work that I've undertaken as part of my doctoral studies. It's difficult to attempt to reflect the breadth of that work and the literature that is available, but I'll endeavour to give you an overview of what work is around and what work's underway. I'm going to divide my presentation into 2 main parts. Firstly, there's a very long and very complex policy history with regard to the development of healthcare provision and mental health care provision. And I'm going to go through a quick an overview of some of the key elements of that framework that have particular regard to the development of quality within healthcare. Secondly, I'm going to describe some of the literature that's available and attempt to identify some key emerging themes with regard to service user satisfaction. And I'll spend a bit of time reflecting on what that might mean for how we progress our services in the future. But finally, I want to ask one question, or end with a question. What does all that mean? And just how do we gather our service user experiences? The quality and policy framework is quite complex and very lengthy. Just for an overview of where the drive that we've currently had towards the quality of service provision has come from, I want to just highlight 1 or 2 key publications. A first-class service that came out in 1998. Here it identified that key quality standards were set through the publication of national service frameworks, called the mental health one, the development of clinical governance standards, implementation of NICE, and most significantly, a national survey of patient and user experience. The NSF for mental health was published following this in 1999. And here it provided a framework of how we should develop and progress services for those with mental health problems. The NHS plan in the year 2000 was much more explicit and identified that quality would be expanded and that quality should include the entire patient experience. From there we had within mental health, as we will all know and love very well, a number of policy implementation guides. They provided a framework on how we should develop our services with quality as an implicit driver we need within each of those. Most significantly for me was within the adult acute inpatient policy implementation guide. And then within that it identified that the philosophy of care provided should be explicitly user-focused. In High Quality Care for All, it was published 2 years ago, Darcy identified that quality would be the organising principle of the NHS. And this put quality at the forefront, yet again, of all that we do. More recently, with the new government liberating the NHS white paper, it further supports that quality agenda and will aim to redefine it further. It identifies that no decisions should be taken without service user involvement. And they now have coined the catchphrase, no decision without me.
Perhaps let me just speak up.
Oh, sorry.
If you don't mind.
Sorry, have people missed all of that? Sorry, I apologise. Against this policy, that's I can hear myself now. Against this policy backdrop, there's been another wealth of perspectives that further support that quality should be driven to the heart of all care, reflecting our current experiences and how they should be different. Peter Carter, the General Secretary of the RCN, identified that patient experiences are predominantly safe, but now we need to drive that up. We need to drive from safe to high quality. There are also a number of service user and other initiatives that reflect on services provided and how it may be improved. I've charted a number here, although we will all be able to identify additional ones to this. I've described, so there are a number identified I've got here, really chart the same journey as the policy guidance that I've just briefly described. And within this slide I've identified the Mind Ward Watch campaign, if people recall that. The Sainsbury Centre work around acute problems and acute solutions, Rethinks Behind Closed Doors document, and the innovative and developing work that we will have been experienced with Star Wards. The Virtual Ward project has also seen fantastic opportunities to learn and share good quality practice. I want to turn specifically to the literature and evidence that's available around what service users themselves believe about the care that's provided. Much has been written, however there really is a lack of evidence of seeking service user perspective on their care during the time that they spend within a PICU. This absence itself is interesting when reflecting on key themes that have emerged and may go some way to explain this absence. The three areas that I'd like to cover are that the views of service users are unable to give valid feedback on the care that they receive, that there's a growing body of evidence reflecting the care that's experienced on acute wards and the variety of methods that are used, and thirdly, that there is still poor evidence of work to elicit service user satisfaction within PICU care. Firstly, when you consider the view that service users cannot give a valid view or feedback around their care, it's really helpful to briefly reflect on the issues around social exclusion. Gale and Grove identified that it has long been recognised that adults with mental health problems are some of the most excluded and disenfranchised groups in society. It's also well documented that social status has a direct impact on mental health, and in order to protect the privacy and dignity of those being cared for within a PICU, many PICUs have been located away from the public gaze or out of view. Paradoxically, this also means that services and the care that are provided are consequently also out of view. Perhaps the fact that service users cared for within PICU may experience the greatest social exclusion is what results in them being most least likely to be heard, or that they're able to provide a view. In their paper describing the development of an evaluation questionnaire within a crisis and home treatment team, Hopkins and Nemec identified there's a history that the voices of mental health service users are less privileged. That they also described the work that's been undertaken by Lovell and Spencer, that they identified that as a view that service users can't give informed judgments, they can't provide valid or reliable feedback of services that they've received. But it's Goodwin and colleagues that describe this in more detail. They identified that there are a number of reasons that are given for denying service users a voice within the care that they're provided. They included the idea that by definition, people with a diagnosis of mental illness or mental health problems do not know their own minds, that they're unsophisticated, and that they're unrepresentative, and they're particularly unrepresentative if they're articulate or are able to express views. They also go on to describe that it's been suggested that respondents to surveys differ from those who are non-respondents, and that the views, once solicited, won't provide any valid feedback that would be of any benefit. Goodwin and colleagues also cite further work and go on to identify reasons why we should use service user views. 3 particular reasons were highlighted in the work that they did. That users of mental health services are a vulnerable group of people, and therefore we have a moral obligation to understand their experiences. Service users can identify ways to provide cost-effective treatments, and that we all need to ensure accountability for what we do, for the care that we provide, by simply asking service users what they think. You'll see from the date this was written some time ago, and whilst the language and the use of terminology may have changed over that time, the essence of what Goodwin is saying is still reflected in the policy documents that have just previously gone through. So as a consequence, these views, although 11 years old, really still are very relevant today. I want to turn to some work that's been completed about reviewing services received across adult acute inpatient wards. Quirk and Elliott have carried out some extensive work and have written a number of articles around their work on acute admission wards. They conclude from their reviews that very little is known about the quality of care that we provide on our acute wards. They describe and they get a sense that hospital care is a black box, that somehow people are admitted, stay for a while, are discharged, and really very little is known or understood about what happens whilst they're there. Within the work that they've described, it's not implied that the services are of low quality, that they lack efficacy, or that they're not appropriate in the way that they're delivered. Simply that we just don't seem to be able to understand about the time that service users spend on acute wards, or about their experiences whilst they're there. They also carried out a review on the types of methods that have been used in order to get feedback from service users about their care. They identified that a number of research strategies and methods have been used, and they identified a lengthy list, including was participant observation, either covert or overt, interviews, questionnaires, surveys, and a variety of observational methods. They also included those that have been more recently used by the Sainsbury Centre, and they included surveys and interviews and combined those with participant observation. However, Quirk and Elliott can still conclude that despite this and some more emerging ethnographic research, that really the service providers were still left with a patchy and inconsistent and really quite a vague picture of everyday life on our wards, and then consequently how that inpatient care is experienced by the service users. They also conclude that whilst research was broad, it's been largely questionnaire based, and that really it barely scratches the surface of everyday life on wards. They also identified that questionnaire surveys and quantitative research has tended to present an unremittingly bleak picture of life on wards. And this is something that we've seen reflected in a number of documents and elements of work that's been completed by Mind and by Rethink, and this came through the work of the Sainsbury Centre. But Quirk and Elliott also identify that they believe that this is unlikely to be the case for all the patients, all of the time, on every ward. And that perhaps really to get to understand truly what's happening on wards, that we need to look at more sophisticated methodology and try to understand where it isn't the case. And I would also add to this that we need to then discover what is it that makes the difference. What is the difference that's provided or experienced that means that their experience has been of a high quality? So I'd just like to turn our focus specifically to understanding the experiences of people being cared for within a PICU. Len Bowers and colleagues carried out a literature review a couple of years ago in 2008. They reviewed all the work, the research that's been undertaken with regard to care that's been provided within PICUs. A number of key elements across those elements of research was explored. For example, they highlighted service user profile, demonstrated reasons for admission, treatments, lengths of stay, and a number of other elements. However, all of that research that they reviewed, there was only one study that focused on service user satisfaction. And it was concluded by this review that the findings of that piece of research broadly indicated that discharged patients were satisfied with the care that they'd received during their time within PICU. This one piece of research was carried out in 1993 by Wildgoose and Carroll. They sent postal questionnaires to a group of service users up to 3 months following that service user's discharge. And I think the work that they achieved gained and provided us with a significant view and a significant aim that disputes many of the historically held views that were previously described. And they are around the validity of obtaining feedback from service users within acute mental health services. They concluded that service users who have experienced hospital admission to an intensive care unit can most definitely provide adequate data on the service that they've received. Several of the written comments that they received on their questionnaires demonstrated that some service users were still experiencing ongoing mental health issues. But despite that feedback, the information that they provided was seen and assessed as being extremely useful and very relevant to understanding their experience. They also identified that this group of service users contain a large proportion of people who are difficult to engage and by definition fit the criteria described with regard to social exclusion. As I was reading through and reviewing this paper, I would support all that Wildgoose and Carroll say and believe it's a very defining piece of work that they did. But one area that I think we could reflect on in attempts to further improve the work that they started, and that was the one area that it didn't do, and that was to capture service users' perceptions and feedback either during or immediately following their care. With regards to recall and memory, a real richness of their recall and memory of their experience was lost. 3 months is quite a lengthy period of time in somebody's life and life experiences. Additionally, they sought to gain feedback through the use of postal questionnaires. But I've got other evidence and other identification that questionnaires really are a method that's subject to quite a lot of criticisms. Questionnaires fail to capture and probably adversely influence the obtaining of accurate views of service users. It's been suggested by a number of authors that patient satisfaction surveys may be a way of identifying satisfaction and validating current practices, rather than identifying or eradicating areas of dissatisfaction. That if we employ questions as generated by us, by service providers, we may well prioritise those against our own service agendas and really limit what it is that service users may wish to tell us. This view about the use of structured and predetermined questionnaires is further supported and criticised as being an insensitive approach. And the researchers that I've listed here, Stallard, Hopkins and Nemec, Carhill, Rackley, which is as described, Goodwin, they have further supported this view that it's an unsophisticated way in this age of really seeking to elicit service user feedback. So I just want to turn to my final thought and the question, given all of this, just how do we gather service user experiences? As previously identified, through the use of questionnaires, when given the choice of response, it may limit respondents' freedom of expression, and it may seek to support organisational or service agendas. It also further identifies that if we wish to understand experiences, and therefore understand what is significant and important to service users, then we need to seek to understand from them what is key for them from their frame of reference, rather than our own subjective perspective. And to return to the slide earlier in the presentation, if we do this, we will attempt to make their world visible, but from their own perspective. Finally, in order to take this forward, really we need to understand just what it is that we wish to know. Do we wish to respond to service questionnaires around the provision of key activities? For example, what was the food like? What were the meal times like? What are the facilities like? How comfy was your bed? Or do we wish to truly understand what service users experience within PICUs? The responses and our answers to these questions is all about the approach that we choose to take. Therefore, if we want service users' views on their care, we should give them the freedom of expression and allow them to tell us what they want us to know, in order that we can get to the heart of what it is like to be a service user receiving psychiatric intensive care. But I'd just like to leave you with one final thought. Huxley said a number of years ago, experience is not what happens to a man, it's what a man does with what happens to him. Therefore, if we're going to understand what it's like to be cared for within a psychiatric intensive care unit, we need to truly understand the experiences that service users have and how that experience is interpreted within their own life context. If we want to truly improve the quality of care that we provide, we must extend our understanding to what happens to the service users, how they interpret that, and not simply just to seek responses to our own questions on our own agendas. Thank you very much.